Some crime scenes are gruesome, some defy logic. But this one was different. It wasn't just the brutality of what happened here, it was the way it lingered, the way it changed those who stepped inside. The first officers on the scene refused to speak of it. Investigators, hardened by years of violent cases, turned away. One of them resigned without explanation. Another left town altogether. What they found inside this ordinary house, on an ordinary street, in an ordinary town, was anything but. Official reports only tell part of the story. What remains unspoken is far more disturbing. On the surface, it was just another home, a place where families should have lived, a place where children should have played. But inside, something was terribly wrong. The 911 call came late at night, the voice on the other end, frantic, barely coherent. The dispatcher struggled to make sense of what they were hearing. A single phrase cut through the chaos: "You need to come now." What officers found inside was worse than anything they had imagined, worse than anything they had ever seen, and yet, no one could explain it. At first, it seemed like a case that could be solved. Evidence was collected, reports were filed, but the deeper investigators looked, the less sense it made. The details were never released in full. The official statements were vague, but those who were there, those who saw it firsthand, knew the truth. Something about this crime scene could never be explained. And it all started with a single call for help. It was just after midnight when officers arrived. The house stood silent. No lights, no movement. Nothing to suggest the horrors waiting inside. The caller never identified themselves. The line went dead before dispatch could ask for more details. By the time police arrived, there was no sign of whoever had made the call. They announced themselves. No response. What they did hear, though, was something else. Something faint, coming from deep inside the house. The first officer on scene described it as a low, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails against wood. Others said it sounded like breathing. Still, protocol had to be followed. The officers stepped inside. That's when they saw blood. But not in the way they expected. Not pooled on the floor. Not smeared in a struggle. No, it was different. Methodical. Precise. And far too much of it for what they found inside. But the most unsettling thing? There were no bodies. There were no bodies. No signs of a break-in. No footprints leading in or out. And yet, something had happened here. Something unexplainable. The officers moved cautiously. Every room told the same story. Blood, but no struggle. Signs of life, but no living soul in sight. Then they reached the last door. Inside, the air was different, thicker, heavier. The walls, covered in something they couldn't explain. At the center of the room stood a single chair. A tape recorder sat on the floor beside it. Someone had left it there. Someone had pressed record. What was on that tape would change the course of the investigation, and for one detective, it would change everything. The audio begins. Heavy breathing. Then a whisper. Distorted, broken, barely audible. I made a mistake. It sees me now. It won't let me leave. The voice on the tape was never identified. No missing persons matched the recording. No fingerprints were found on the device. It was as if whoever left the message had never existed. Then there was the note. Just one sentence scrawled in uneven handwriting. Investigators hoped forensic testing would explain something, anything, but the results only raised more questions. The blood found in the house? It didn't match any known victims. In fact, it didn't match anyone at all. And then there was the security footage. The night before officers arrived, the house was empty. No movement, no lights, no visitors. Detectives began to question everything. Was this a crime scene? Or was it something else entirely? The official report classified it as an unresolved crime scene. No arrests, no suspects, no known victims. The house was eventually condemned, but that didn't stop people from talking. Neighbors swore they saw lights flicker inside at night. Others claimed they heard something, voices, footsteps, coming from the empty house. The security footage, the blood, the tape, no explanations were ever found, and as time passed, the case faded from public memory. And to this day, no one knows who made that 911 call. Some cases are solved, others are simply left behind, but this one, it refuses to be forgotten. The tape, the blood, the handprints, the missing caller. No matter how many questions were asked, the answers never came. What do you think really happened inside that house? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more true horror stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next.